Today is all about people, because at the end of the day, we humans have managed to increase our greenhouse gas emissions to the point that we're changing our planet's climate. Therefore, the solution to the problem lies within us. It is important to explore some definitions. Justice is the concept that individuals are to be treated in a manner that is equitable and fair. Equity refers to fairness and justice in the way people are treated. Injustice is the absence of justice, and it relates to the violation of someone's rights. An inequality is a situation in society where people have better opportunities than others for factors outside of their control, like their race, their gender, or their financial status. Inequality amongst humans is something that has caused a lot of pain and suffering over the centuries, and unfortunately, this trend continues with climate change injustice. One might think that in modern times slavery doesn't exist anymore. But unfortunately, in 2021, approximately 50 million people were living in some form of slavery throughout the world, despite it being illegal. More than 12 million are children. Women and girls are disproportionately affected. Modern slavery refers to situations of exploitation that a person cannot refuse, such as forced labor, forced marriage, and human trafficking. The countries with the highest frequency of modern slavery are Africa, the Arab states, Asia, and the Pacific. For European citizens, it is hard to grasp this concept because we don't see it with our own eyes. So how does slavery relate to climate change? Take America, for example. America was colonized by Europeans, establishing a system of slavery between the 1500s and the 1800s that formed their economic system, where slaves worked for the benefit of the richer people. Indigenous people were stripped not only of their human rights but also of their home, the land where they had resided for centuries. There was taking of land not just for expansion but also to search for gold, chopping down trees, disrupting water and ecological systems to build a capitalist society. To put it in simple terms, there has always been a percentage of human society that in order to get richer, to have more things, more land, more food, more money, have used other people and destroyed natural resources to achieve their goals. And unfortunately, this is still very much the case in modern times. We see injustice in everyday life. The fashion industry often produces clothes in sweatshops where workers are underpaid and forced to work long hours. Children are sometimes exploited in these factories. This exploitation happens because rich companies want to make more money, and to do so, they reduce their production costs, even if that means exploiting other people. Without our knowledge, we are all contributing to this system of exploitation and environmental degradation. Consumerism fuels the demand for cheaper things, which in turn makes us buy more things. But inequality and injustice do not stop with fashion. There are many other industries like food and agriculture, technology, and even construction where the quest to benefit the most privileged in society supersedes the human rights of poorer people and our natural environment. Mary Robinson was the first female president of Ireland and a former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. She explains that climate justice compels us to understand the challenges faced by those people and communities most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Often the people on the front lines of climate change have contributed least to the cause of this crisis. For example, Africa contributes less than 3% of the pollution responsible for climate change, but it is the most severely impacted by the crisis. They're also less equipped and supported by their global peers to adapt to climate change. Therefore, they suffer the most from its effects, as well as having fewer opportunities to develop, because they need to focus on addressing the current challenges they face. A marginalized group refers to communities that have unequal access to power and experience exclusion in society. Climate change affects everyone, but marginalized groups are more severely impacted due to their limited ability to adapt for the following reasons. Economic inequality. Marginalized and lower income countries struggled to adapt to climate change due to financial issues. Racial inequality. Marginalized communities face more environmental hazards like air, water, and soil pollution. Generational inequality. Younger generations will bear the brunt of climate change, facing long-term consequences. As marginalized groups are so vulnerable to climate change, it is vital to include these groups in the decision-making process. For example, giving young people a seat at the table when it comes to policy, or allowing indigenous people to lead reforestation efforts. These actions would support climate justice. Kofi Annan, a diplomat who served as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations, said, "Our biggest challenge in this century is to take an idea that seems abstract, like sustainable development, and turn it into a reality for all the world's people." Another important concept to grasp is the idea of a just transition. The UN Sustainable Development Goals collectively represent the agenda of a just transition. The International Labour Organization defines the just transition as greening the economy in a way that is fair and inclusive as possible to everyone concerned, creating decent work opportunities and leaving no one behind. At its core, a just transition is about planning for a sustainable and inclusive economy. It seeks opportunities for public and private investments that support economic development while addressing climate change. Our current system depends heavily on fossil fuels and is unsustainable long term. This is why a just transition is essential as we shift from fossil fuels to renewables. In 2020, Pornamona, a semi-state Irish company established in the mid-1940s to develop peatlands with the aim of achieving security of energy supply in the Irish Midlands, commenced a major peatland rehabilitation initiative. They recently called a permanent end to peat harvesting, which if not dealt with correctly would have meant all people working in the company would lose their jobs. Instead, with the support of climate action funding from the Irish government, workers were upskilled to continue working, although performing very different jobs than they did previously. Their jobs are now oriented to improve biodiversity and contribute to Ireland's target of being carbon neutral by 2050. A social movement is an organized effort by a large group of people to achieve a particular goal, typically a social or political one. Some examples through history are the civil rights movement, the environmental movement, the LGBTQ+ rights movement, the labor movement, the vegan or vegetarian movement, and the feminist movement. Social movements have the potential to inform and lead society to change. Differing in size, they bring a collective to either implement or prevent a change in society. When I think of social movements, I imagine mass gatherings and placard-carrying marches. However, with the ever-increased use of technology and the internet, these dynamics have shifted towards the so-called keyboard warriors and the use of social media. Social movements can be powerful drivers for change. However, a note of caution, that all may not be as it seems. In the online world, we may find movements that start using misinformation or partial truths to create chaos. So when we're absorbing online information, it is key to ensure the sources are reliable. We have talked about the responsibility that we have as humans to right the errors of the past, especially with climate action and climate justice, and how through our own behavior we can help tackle exploitation and injustice. Remember, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for everyone, everywhere. Here are some actions you can adopt at individual level. Aim to reduce your carbon footprint. You can achieve this by reducing your energy use with all the tips provided in the energy lesson. Incorporate more plant-based foods into your diet to reduce the carbon footprint associated with meat production. Buy locally sourced and seasonal products to reduce the impact of food transportation. Choose products made from sustainable materials and with minimal packaging. Repair and continue to use your clothes and buy second-hand clothing, furniture and other goods to reduce demand for new resources. Be mindful of water use in daily activities like washing dishes, watering plants and taking showers. Review all the water conservation tips from the water lesson. Share your knowledge of climate justice with your friends, family and with your community. and join local environmental organisations to engage in collective action and community projects. We have come to the end of this lesson. I would like to encourage you to complete the activities on the lessons workbook.